Hi, this is Paula Gloria, and this show is called Farther Down the Rabbit Hole. Today we have a show that I've been waiting to have for a long, long time, and we're going to be talking about AIDS, and we're going to be talking about HIV, and whether all of these things are what we thought they were. But before I call and bring on the show my hairdresser, Mark Rogers, in the Upper East Side, and we're going to be hearing from Gregory in Palm Springs. I'll give him a call. Well, actually, let me call him right now, and then I'll give the introduction together. So first I want to say hello to Mark. Hi, Mark.
Hi, Paula. Great to hear your voice.
Yes, and we're having Mark on Skype, and what we're going to do now is call up California. Let me briefly introduce this, and then we'll take it away. I just want to say that how I got interested in this topic is from this book. And this book says, Why We Will Never Win the War on AIDS. And it's written by a man called Brian J. Ellison, who is a graduate student of Peter Duesberg at UC Berkeley. Now let me tell you the story about this book. I was on the island of Cyprus, and my husband at the time, Vincenzo, and I were trying to start an eco-village, and we were very interested in healing modalities. And I'm not sure how I came across this topic, but I ordered 2 copies of this book. And I went away to India. And I came back, and the book had arrived. And I read the book, and I was so impressed that I wanted to buy 20 more copies because we had a center. And the check had been returned, and it said address unknown. And then I got on the internet after I got this news, because it was such a great book. I wanted to pass it around. I wanted people to see it. And I discovered on the internet that this book was unavailable for reasons of national security. I was astonished. Now, a few days later, it no longer had that notation on the internet. So I thought that was pretty interesting. So basically what the book says is that there are many diseases that people are dying from, and the diseases come from the medicine itself. It's not coming from the disease. People are actually sickened by the medicine that they're given. That's sort of the long and short of it. Now, I have on the line somebody from California who's had experience, so you might want to talk about your experience, and then Mark Rogers, because he's very active in the New York scene, so he can kind of give us an overview as we consider the whole theory of HIV and of AIDS. And I know this is a huge topic, gentlemen, and I expect that we will be having many more discussions in the future, and I'm hoping to get Gregory to do his own TV show here on Rabbit Hole Central. So take it away, Gregory.
Oh my goodness, that's going to be a lot. That's going to be a big step for me to go from where I've been to be hosting my own show. Goodness.
Well, what I'll do is I'm going to put up your YouTube site right now so people can know what they can get to today, which is, your best site is HIV Questions, is that right?
Yeah.
Okay, so I will load that up. And so maybe tell people now about how you got involved with all of this.
I guess I started when I got a positive HIV test in 1993. And then, you know, subsequently went on to different antiretroviral medications. About on and off 11 of the past 15 years. And along that time, I kept doing my research to find out what the latest was. And finally, a little over a year ago, I got the high-speed internet. And so I was able to find information and a lot of things that I had never seen before. So I went ahead and I stopped all medications at that time. I don't ever plan to go back on them. And then I created that channel on YouTube.
Can you talk a little bit about your process? Because I remember when you first contacted me, you found me through YouTube. I was really excited to have somebody who had first-hand experience with this theory. and I had encouraged you to talk about it, but can you talk about why you were reticent to talk about it and how that's changed today?
I think at that time I was just so overwhelmed with emotion. I mean, I just couldn't believe what had happened, what I had discovered. I was in shock. And I don't know, maybe we could relate this to a war veteran. When they come back from war, after the shocks that they've been through, you know, how do they feel? Why can't they talk? You know?
Wow, that's a very good analogy, particularly today when soldiers are coming back from Iraq. Can you briefly describe what it was like for 10 years to take this medication, what was going through your mind, and then how do you think you attracted to yourself this knowledge that perhaps your problem was from the medicine and not what a disease that it, you know what I mean?
I think I understand. I will say that every time I took the medications, I was very sick. And it even got to the point where I was having seizures. Another medication caused me to have neuropathy, which is numbness and tingling in my hands and in my feet. Just daily diarrhea. It was just a nightmare. I mean, I really feel like I was terrorized.
Did you have any idea that it might be from the medicine, the AZT? Was it AZT that you were taking?
I only tried AZT for about a week. That was one of the first medications that a doctor had prescribed to me, and it made me so sick that I refused to take it anymore, and that probably saved my life. But
let me see what Mark has to say. Your experience. Can you kind of describe your experience in the scene here in New York, Mark? Do is cut the sound on rabbitholecentral.tv, because this is going to be a very juicy discussion and very important discussion for more people than just who have an HIV diagnosis or AIDS, because you see, what fascinates me is that the theme goes in so many other directions about what we are told reality is versus what our own bodies are telling us. And I was hoping to have the experience of two men, one from California, a little bit younger, and one, Mark, here in New York. You were privy to some of the most exciting times, right? Can you talk about where you were working in I guess, the 80s?
Yeah, I worked at Saint Andre and then Pierre Michel, and they were very large upscale salons, and many of the people I worked with, almost all of them, died. It was really dreadful, and of course people were taking a lot of recreational drugs, and in fact when they were given this death sentence, many of them just felt like partying until they dropped. You know, they were so depressed and they kind of given up.
So you're telling me that to get a death sentence made them kind of go out with wild abandon? They just felt this was going to happen, it was inevitable, and so they never even considered that their lifestyle might be a factor to their health?
Exactly. And they were told that they were going to die within 2 years. Now, of course, they've upped it to about 10 years, but I'm not even so sure that that many are lasting that long.
So, Gregory, what do you think about this?
I think somehow I have gotten into a parallel reality. And, you know, because I was believing for so long what I was told, what everybody agrees to believe about HIV and AIDS because of what we're told. I mean, it's almost like we're living in North Korea, where the government tells us something and we're all so scared we just believe it.
Right. Now, I want to kind of cut to the chase here. There, you know, having studied this for so long, having absolutely adored this book, Why We Will Never Win the War on AIDS, and you're never going to be able to find it because it was banned for reasons of national security, because I think people would be in an uproar if they understood many of the aspects of our health non-care, and they, you know, keep wanting more money to get more non-care, as far as I'm concerned. The issue that I'm seeing now is I've talked to two leaders in this field. One is Michael Elner with HEAL, Health Education AIDS Liaison. Another one is Dean Lauren. And Dean Lauren is the son of a biowarfare scientist. And I think that part of the problem is sometimes people think if one thing is true, then only that is true and everything else is false, where there may be actually two truths juxtaposed. And that's why I'm very happy that we have Mark with us, because he can give us his eyeball account of the scene that was going on in the 80s that other people who maybe were not so active in that scene might only be able to speculate on. And here it is. Dean is saying that there was a concerted effort to give a virus to certain parts of the population in a conscious way. The other theory is that although it's true a medical industry was not operating in good faith by having a fraudulent HIV test out and then giving death sentences and putting people on regimes, still it's mostly a question of lifestyle. So here's the two issues. One is that you actually have a deadly virus, but it's not HIV. And the other is that there's no such thing as any deadly virus, and it was all because of an abandoned lifestyle. And so that's what I would like to throw this open to you two gentlemen, to just sort of give your experience. Maybe we can start with Mark and then go on to Gregory.
Yeah, now this is just something that I observed, and for what it's worth. There were people that were, there were trucks in the village, and there were people in the bathhouses with tables inoculating people against hepatitis B. And I happened to be very close to a nurse and went to have tea at someone's house on the Upper East Side. And there's a doctor and his wife, and they worked at Mount Sinai Hospital. And she said, you know, after these inoculations for hepatitis B, we had all of these gay men coming into the hospital, and they were mostly all gay men getting these inoculations because they encouraged them, because of their lifestyle, to protect themselves. And she said everybody has been coming in with sores and rashes and sicknesses. A couple of weeks later, within no time, she said we had hordes of people getting sick, and she thought perhaps that there was something tainted with the hepatitis B vaccine. Of course, never thinking it could have been some kind of population control, which I'm not saying it is, but it certainly is suspicious. And then, of course, you've got Africa, where people are dying like flies now. And there's been a lot of speculation. There's a lot of websites that indicate that maybe, just like what Dean Lauren said, and they did talk about making germ warfare to weaken the enemy. This was talked about in the 70s. And they definitely have worked on these things. It's not as though they don't exist. It's just whether or not they would use something like that.
Now, what I want to do now is turn this over to Gregory, and then just briefly say what this book is saying is that it is purely a question of lifestyle, that there never was anything maliciously, put into society. And I think there is a value with that, and I think that could well be true, particularly if you are giving an HIV test for, well, actually, Gregory, you explain the HIV test, okay, and then we'll...
Well, the test, I think, is designed to detect protein antibodies. And somehow those antibodies are supposed to determine the HIV virus, the presence of it. But the test itself has a legal disclaimer saying that it does not detect HIV infection. So the body can produce protein antibodies after a flu vaccination or when a woman is pregnant.
Right.
And yet they still, pass this test off as the definitive test for a deadly virus. So
right.
what are you trying to do?
So I just want to clarify, you've got two things running here. One is that there actually is malicious intent in terms of biowarfare, but the other is that through abusive lifestyle, through the psychological trauma of having a death sentence, you may simply be pregnant and producing a positive reaction to an HIV test that then gets you on a regime, which is, we'll talk about the regime. Gregory?
The medications?
Yeah.
And I put that in quotation marks.
Right.
As the studies, at least in my new parallel reality, are showing that the medications are killing more people than the lives that they claim to be saving. So I don't know if I've just gone into a different reality, but every time I look on the computer, I constantly see these government-issued warnings and you know, these disclaimers on all the medications. So it's so bizarre because they market them as life-saving, you know,
and yet they have disclaimers.
Many more years of life, extending your life. But the studies are not really showing that in my reality.
Right.
I'm really kind of torn. It's like more than half the people believe what they're being told. And you know who funds the studies are these pharmaceutical companies.
But hang on just one second. You said you're being torn, and I want to make a comment about that. You have made a decision. You're not torn anymore. You've taken a direction. You have said no to this medication. I just want to emphasize that. There are some people who are torn, and as a result of being torn, they're not taking any strong steps. Am I correct?
Well, yeah, I stopped the medications because, like I said, in my reality, from the actual studies that I have been looking at, from all the information that I've reviewed and researched, it just wouldn't make sense for me to take these so-called medications.
Okay, great. Now, Mark, can you talk about your experience observing what was happening to your friends, whether they took that that hepatitis shot or not? If they got an HIV positive test and they started to take the AZT or whatever, what did you observe?
Yeah, there are people around. Yeah, I'm very much involved in natural healing and mind and various things like that, meditation, and there is a health food store in the village that is a lot of gay guys go to with a very good herbalist, and he said that there are a lot of people coming there that have taken no medicine, 25 years, there's nothing wrong with them, they never got sick, and this is around, and if you go to a doctor, they don't know who these people are because these people don't go to the doctor. So the doctors themselves, I don't believe, are to blame. Also, I'd like to say about before, I don't necessarily believe that they're continuing malicious intent. I think after a lot of people died, for whatever reason, they didn't need to do that anymore. Everybody was scared then. And all they had to do was tell people they were positive, and that was enough. They didn't have to really kill anybody. And they would go on the drugs. And then, of course, when they started getting sick, the patient would have a confirmation and believe that it was from the virus. And they knew the medicines were making them sick, but they felt that they were going to be sick anyway. And I think the body, if you're throwing up and you're feeling so lousy, your body's rejecting this poison. And if it were like chemotherapy, which is questionable also, and you were on it for a short time, a couple of weeks or whatever, that's one thing. But when you're told to live on this crap for the rest of your life, how can your body put that into your body for the rest of your life?
Right. Now, let me make a comment on this. You two gentlemen, I know, and many of my viewers are familiar with my father's case. And maybe you have in your life somebody similar to my father, and that is that he has a great faith in the system. And as I got close to, realizing he had this very horrible sentence, and wanting to be able to give the best of what I've learned, I had to come up against his belief system versus mine, and that belief and faith is also very important. My father today has lived through 5 years of chemotherapy. It's quite astonishing. And even Michael Elner, when he looked at my dad, he said, most people, you know, from a long time back, you know, would have been ravished. He couldn't believe how good my father was looking, and that was a few years ago. And my father is convinced that the chemotherapy has helped him. So this is something, particularly because, Gregory, I know you want to make a commitment to go into the healing sciences or arts, you know, not to say to people, you know, run away from the doctors and things like that. I know Michael used the term fire your doctor, which seemed kind of harsh. How do you also, but if you talk to Michael for a while too, he's very sensitive of how you bring people into a healing direction. How do you account for the power of the mind and what it believes in? Greg?
The psychoneuroimmunology?
Well, if somebody is, like Mark has just described, these very horrible medicines that are making you throw up, and you have been through it firsthand, right, Gregory?
Yes.
And when you stopped doing it, you were feeling better because you weren't taking the medicine, but something else was taken away from you, and I think that's faith, and I think that's why you had to go through that angry phase and so on. My father chooses never to go through this. He will always do what the doctor says.
I don't know, I guess I just have always questioned everything a doctor ever told me, and I remember in the beginning, because I had not really gone to doctors before this diagnosis, and I would, you know, ask the doctor certain questions about certain things, and they would be very arrogant, and they wouldn't be answering my questions, and they'd look at me like, you know, why are you asking that? You don't need to know. So it just was always so frustrating for me, my experience with doctors, and I don't know, I just always said, well, I'm going to have to do my own research now.
And yet you did for 11 years, you took this medicine.
I know, it was insane. I mean, looking back now.
So, Mark, can you tell me, other people that you've observed, did you know anybody who had this kind of mistrust of doctors and yet would take the medicine for 10 or 11 years?
Well, you know, this is a little off subject, but I never really believed too much in doctors, and I never got sick. And because I was into holistic medicine and things like that, herbs and things, I didn't. And I must say, I did have a health issue about 3 years ago that lasted a while, and they did save my life, literally. So I do think doctors have a place, and we're glad to have them. But when it comes to this, I just think they're hoodwinked as much as everyone else. And
now, hang on. When you say hoodwinked, do you mean to say that they're acting in good faith? They just haven't been given the right information themselves?
Yeah, I think so. But I often wonder, though, how they can see people over time and give them HIV medicine and see them. I would think you would have an instinct when you saw people getting sicker and sicker and sicker that there's some indication that the medicine was doing it.
But maybe that's the problem with our I won't even say healthcare, but our whole educational system is to sort of separate us from the realities.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Do you have anything to say on that, Gregory?
Let's see. Doctors. Some of them, yeah, I guess they just don't know. And they are following orders and guidelines given to them by the CDC, and the CDC is run by the military. And
no, say what the CDC is. Tell people.
The Centers for Disease Control.
Right.
And they apparently just put out the information about HIV and the medications.
Okay, now I just want to pause for people who don't have a feeling of the CDC, Center for Disease Control. In this book, what it talks about is saying that the Center for Disease Control is a big bureaucracy, and there's a lot of management of statistics. It's kind of like what Mark Twain said, there's lies, there's damn lies, and then there's statistics. So it appears that there's about 20 different symptoms, and they've kind of juggled these symptoms around in such a way that they're either called AIDS or they're not. If you have an HIV positive test with tuberculosis, then it's AIDS. If it's a negative test, then it's just tuberculosis. Is that correct, your understanding?
That's right.
Now, back in the, can you make a comment about lifestyle, or what's your position about this now, Mark? Is it a maliciously released virus, or is it just lifestyle? Because you've seen a lot.
Well, I think a lot of it is lifestyle. People, you know, nowadays, the 80s went by and people became much more clean living and, you know, working out in the gym and not taking drugs as much and not sleeping around. And now, of course, the young people haven't seen all these people dropping dead around them, so they're beginning to drift back into hedonism again and, you know, taking more drugs. And, you know, my life is going in a direction of a lot of spirituality, so I don't really, you know, in my private clientele, and my life has become more private, so I don't go around and see as much of what's going on as I did.
Yes, I understand that. Gregory, can you make a comment on lifestyle?
Lifestyle. It almost sounds judgmental, but that's just me personally at the moment. I want to make a quick comment that out of the 195 countries that are on this planet, there are, I think it's 8 of them that still have the death penalty for homosexuality.
Right.
So if we put it into context, we can kind of see that there still are, I mean, that's a small percentage of all the countries on the planet, but there still are countries where if someone is gay and they're killed, nobody cares, or at least the laws say that they should be killed. So to me, that's quite frightening in itself.
Well then, but see, when I'm saying about perceiving reality, you could have had something on these trucks in the West Village that Mark was describing, and then the other thing is, like in your case, you got on this regime simply because of a test, for no other reason than a test. Is that correct?
Well, the initial test, as well as follow-up doctor visits and lab work, that showed a slow decline in my T cells. And of course that can be attributed just to the simple fact that I was so despondent over this news. You know, that depression can cause the body to create a sense of immune depression.
So then it's a question of self-worth, that part of the healing process has to do with feeling valuable.
Yeah, I guess it is designed in this reality that if you happen to be homosexual, that you're put into a situation where there's going to be a lot of fears, because the norm, most people, the agreed, you know, norms of societies are very much anti-homosexual, so it's a really strange reality to be in.
Mark, do you have any comments? On one hand, it seems there's some bamboozling going on here, you know, that maybe there was some malicious intent. It only went on for a while, it was an experiment, then it was pulled back, and then there's a different,
what I think.
And then there's a different kind of maliciousness going on now because people are having a better lifestyle, and yet it seems as though they're fanning this up again. And I think this is why Gregory called this to my attention the other day with the Marine sergeant, that although you're saying that maybe the young people are getting a little careless because they haven't seen the horrors that you lived through and you saw, but it still seems that over and above lifestyle, that if you're fine, maybe you have a very active sex life, but that's not enough to make you sick. But maybe a fraudulent, meaningless HIV test will put you on a bunch of medicines that will be a problem.
I think even without the medicines, you might get sick if you believed in it. You know, Michael Ellner's a big proponent of the mass hypnosis, of telling people that they're going to get sick and it's inevitable. The thing, this is what Peter Duisberg said, that women really in America there were very few women that got AIDS. They would blow it up on the news and everything every time a certain woman might have done it. Become positive, but the numbers were very low. And so if it were sexually transmitted, and it did go into the heterosexual population all over in other places like Africa, and there's no reason to believe it wouldn't have spread just like any other venereal disease in the United States among men and women. But women did not get it. And Peter Duisberg says that in drug abuse, 80% of the drug usage, heavy drug usage, is men. Men like drugs, whether they're gay or straight, more than women, and they tend to party more and indulge more.
But also, they might not have been in the West Village when those trucks were handing out those, what did you call them, hepatitis shots?
Hepatitis B,
yeah.
Absolutely.
I bet you anything, you know, for those who are statistic happy, that if you got a hold of those statistics in those years, I think we could probably throw a lot of light on the mischief. But I want to hear now from Gregory about what you feel today is the most urgent concern, because I think we've already put to rest that even if it was some biowarfare, it was a temporary thing, maybe an experiment. I hate to think that.
Yeah, and then where do we go from here on?
Yeah. Gregory, do you have?
Well, of course, I always want to direct people to my channel at YouTube. That's just, you know, HIV questions, or even if you search Google, you will find that link to my channel. You mentioned a moment ago, Paula, about the sergeant. This is a 20-year police veteran from Los Angeles Police Department, and also a retired Marine sergeant. And now he's a private investigator. Well, a few months back, when Professor Duisberg was being awarded with the Semmelweis Clean Hands Awards in Washington, D.C., this man happened to be there for something unrelated. Actually, it was another person's Semmelweis investigation. Anyhow, so this investigator took on the case. He was hired by Semmelweis. And so he came to the conclusions of basically what I'm saying at my channel. And in fact, I have links to podcast interviews that he did recently, so you can listen to him yourself.
That's good. Mark?
Yeah, I would urge anybody who's interested to go to HIV Questions, all one word. Gregory's done a wonderful job on this channel and really put in a lot of time and effort to help to bring some light to the subject.
So what do you think, gentlemen, about maybe even co-hosting a regular show at Rabbit Hole Central? Would you be interested in that?
I think it would be great, and I have invited Gregory to come and stay here if he'd like to when he gets a chance to come to New York. And I think we'd have a great time. It would be wonderful.
What do you think you can do for people? What would you do if somebody calls up and they're all despondent? Because we definitely do not want to be giving medical advice. I can't emphasize.
Absolutely.
I can't emphasize it enough, especially having watched my father. I don't want to interfere with anybody's belief system, and yet I feel there are people who are analyzing and thinking, and they're needing some kind of maybe community. Maybe we could offer community.
I think they have to make their own decision.
For sure.
A lot of information. Peter Duisberg was held in very high esteem, and as soon as he went against this hypothesis, he was completely defunded, and he's not allowed to speak at any of these AIDS conferences. Even if he's wrong, he should be allowed to speak there, because he always had great credibility, and anybody who sees him on the internet can see it by looking at his face. He's very smart, and that is suspicious right there.
So what do you think we can do I always, you guys, you know my channel. I look into some of the biggest horrors, but I'm just passionate that it's by looking at these that we can gain the knowledge that we need, and we can have a clearer and more effective life.
Yeah, people just need to get into taking good care of themselves, respecting themselves, loving themselves to the greatest ability that they're able to do it, and to keep on moving forward with that, because that alone will start to steer people in the right direction in their lives.
What do you think, Gregory?
Well, you mentioned a moment ago that, you know, we're not giving medical advice.
Right.
Well, obviously, we're not doctors.
Right.
We're just people that happen to live through life on this planet. So, you know, we didn't go to medical training, but we had the physical experience of receiving, in my case, medical treatment. But if you don't want to listen to me, that's okay. I mean, I'm not, you know, how can you force someone to listen to something? I guess you'd have to be like a government. I'm just kidding.
No, let me put a suggestion in. I think it's very important that when you want to empower people to think for themselves, you also don't want to encourage them to think what you're thinking. You know what I mean?
No, I don't know what you mean on that one.
Okay. You can say, I have assembled this information and I'm presenting it in such a way, but you need to be the one that puts it together and say that is your decision.
Yeah,
Nobody's.
You can't do that for a child or an infant. You know, when they start having this mandatory testing for pregnant women and their infants at hospitals, which they've started to do, you know, pregnancy itself causes a positive result. And then they're putting this in data banks, and, you know, and you don't even know. Sometimes they're secretly testing you. So it's a bizarre.
So there you go. Gregory's right. I'm wrong. I see. Do you see what I was getting at, Mark? But he stumped me there. What do you do in the case of children? Because I just a couple days ago did a show about this in San Bernardino, California, where they're doing something called Operation Phoenix, and they're sweeping up children who they have determined are in impoverished. You know, they have poor parents. So because of poverty, these children are taken away from their parents. Who is going to...
Just saw on the internet that they're doing this in England too. They're taking people off of assistance, women with children, if they don't submit to some kind of, you know, in a way it could be seen as positive. They want them to have some kind of a supervision to learn things and to not grow up to be dysfunctional, but they're insisting on it, or they take them off of what they call the dole over there. And there's a lot of Tony Blair was talking about it himself, and there's a lot of that also on YouTube that people can check out.
So Gregory, what do you do to kind of shield yourself from all this negativity?
You know, you got to meditate. You got to remember, love one another, and have compassion for humanity. I mean, I just think that, yes, this world has all kinds of crazy stuff. This is like the insane asylum of the universe. But despite and through it all, you know, we still have to rise up within ourselves and do the best we can to love one another, to show the compassion, to listen to people who are crying out. You know, we just have to do this.
Well, thank you so much. I mean, I really hear what you're saying. And
oh, there was an earthquake here yesterday, and it was about 2 hours away, but it shook my apartment out here in Palm Springs. So that kind of rattled me yesterday. Earthquakes and me don't go too well together. So.
There's a lot of that in California.
Yes.
You can't be in the business of telling people their medical advice, but people can. There's a lot of information now, especially with Gregory's site and various other things, that people can really make up their own minds and question some of what's going on, and see, especially if they feel really sick. then maybe they could use another alternative besides those drugs, at least for a while, and see what it does for them.
Right, right. Well, I just have a lot of confidence that between you two, you can mostly reach out and make people feel that they're valuable and that they count. Because my feeling is the ills of the world really are based when people don't feel that they're valuable. And sometimes they express this unmet need of self-value by saying there's something wrong with the other guy. And so that's my feeling of the importance of dealing with this HIV/AIDS, and including imagining bringing in the health industry and healing them too, because I think there is misinformation, and we don't want to get bogged down into that type of corruption, so that what we put our attention on grows in life. I want the attention to be on the beauty in life, and I want to thank both of you for being part of my life, because you have made it that much more beautiful, and I really mean that. Anything else, Gregory?
You look so pretty in pink.
Oh, I love Paula in pink, but it's time for a hair appointment.
Oh, yes, that's true. Don't, you know. So there you go.
I just want to say thank you so much for this time, and I just think you're terrific. I've been watching you over a year now at YouTube, and you've really helped me get through quite a bit, so thank you so much.
Oh, well, great. He's not making any commitments. That's fine.
Well.
I'm a Libra.
Okay. Okay, good. Well, thanks a lot, gentlemen, and let's be in touch, and I'll get this up on YouTube, and let's see where it goes, okay?
Love you, Paula.
Okay. Love you too. Bye. Wasn't that fun? Do you have any after comments there? Oh no, I don't have any sound. Okay, bye.